You learn from the mistakes of your grandfather and you invest in the likes of your children. Are my kids going to be more likely to want to spend time in the metaverse, or are they going to be more likely to want to go camping with their friends? The green energy space is the second fastest growing industry in the world outside of AI.
If I don't make 8 figures in the next couple of years, there's a problem.
I can really confidently say that if somebody buys today, within the next 18 months, you're going to be able to sell that for 3 times as much.
What up, Wealth Builders? Today, I've got somebody with me that I'm super excited to interview. This guy and I actually are buying a lot together in Costa Rica on a luxury golf course. You know, you guys maybe have heard me talk about it. He's going to be my partner on the deal, and we're going to share it together. It's going to be awesome. But the funny thing is, him and I have actually never met in person until now in this interview. And the reason I like this guy is because we share so many different commonalities, both believers. He's in the real estate industry, just on the mortgage side. He's actually done over $4 billion worth of loans, which is absolutely incredible. Into the crypto space like I am, just an entrepreneur with lots of other things like solar and, you know, in content. So we share a lot of the same passions. And that's why we're partners now. I got Brian Decker. What's up, man?
Good, man. I appreciate you having me on. I know it's funny. I was telling my wife today when I flew out here, I'm like, hey, babe, so I'm finally going to go meet the guy we bought the lot with. She's like, oh, what has that been, 6 months? I was like, yeah, we're busy, you know, so I'm stoked to be here, brother.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate you coming out. It's Halloween today.
Yeah.
You know, we got the office dressed up. I forgot to dress up, but
me too.
I'm not going to win the contest. It's all good.
Yeah.
But, dude, so, I mean, we'll talk about the lot and how all that came about too, because I think that's a crazy story for both of us, how we both finally like came together on that. But the mortgage side, I mean, that's how you've made your money over the years. I mean, you were a top 5 lender literally in the entire country for like a decade.
Yeah.
Like, how did you do it?
You know, honestly, I went to college to become a CPA, right? Because that was a safe path. Didn't grow up with a lot of money. And so I was kind of instilled with me as a kid. My dad was an accountant. His dad was an accountant. And my grandfather always told me, like, hey, if you want to know business, you got to learn how to speak the language of business, which is accounting. If you're going to, be an English teacher, or you're going to be a poet, you got to learn the language. If you want to be a businessman, the language is accounting. And so went to school doing accounting and got out, got a job at Deloitte & Touche, was super excited. And remember, I signed my contract and it was $31,000 a year. And I was like, wait, okay, I worked all this college education for this. And I had 2 roommates. Both of them dropped out of college. And we came home, and we just graduated from Biola University out in LA. And they come home and they're like, yeah, dude, we killed it. You want to go out? You know? And I was like, they were going to go out to Morton Steakhouse. And I'm like, dude, I can't afford to go to Morton Steakhouse, man. Like, I was like, how can you guys afford that? They're like, oh, we're doing loans. I was like, you two who were a PE major and a dropout in sports physiology are doing mortgage loans? And I'm like, how much you guys make? And they're like, oh, I made like 12 grand this week. You made $12,000 in a week? And this is like 2004, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, okay, it's going to crash. It's going to crash. Well, then long and behold, it didn't crash. So after they just kept coming home, making all this money, called my dad up and I'm like, Dad, okay, I'm getting out of this whole accounting game. I was like, I ain't going to do this. I'm going to go into loans. And so my dad was like, this is a bubble. It's going to crash. Of course, he ended up being right. But, I was like, no, I'm going to sacrifice all this hard work that I did for being an accountant. And I'm going to go take this loan thing, but I'm going to take it serious.
Yeah.
And so I got into loans. And then when the market collapsed, everybody got out of the industry. But I was honestly just too prideful to let my dad be right.
Hey, can I say one thing though about the bubble is that like literally people have been saying there's a bubble for, 2004, right? You would have had many years to still kill it. Even before 2004, like when was the last recession before that?
Yeah, like what, 99 to 01. And it was a weak one, really just the 9/11 thing was causing.
Yeah, I mean, like for 30 years, you might have been right once or twice.
Yeah. And I think that's where people, in any cycle, all that a bubble means is the majority of people that didn't have a skill set to survive get out of the industry. Yeah. And those that have the skill set thrive.
Yeah. There's a lot of lenders who are now gone. There's a lot of realtors who are gone because they were a byproduct of the market.
Exactly. And they were order takers rather than actually being able to sell and educate. Right. And so stayed in the mortgage game and just kind of grinded through it and put all my, my living expenses on a credit card when the mortgage kind of market collapsed in 08, just refused to give up and just ended up coming out on the other side of it.
How did you do before that? How were
I did well, but I got caught up in the kind of the Orange County scene a little bit. So like, we would joke around. It was like the Wolf of Wall Street days without the drug use. It wasn't quite like that, like they made it in the movie. But you're 24 years old, you're making $15,000, $20,000 a week.
You were making that much?
Yeah, I was like 23, 24, making probably 50, 60 a month.
That's crazy.
I was spending it. Like we were all spending it. Like we were just doing dumb things. I remember my buddy and I, we were 23 and we went to Havasu, right? We came down from Havasu. We get back, we're like, let's buy a boat. We're like, okay, we're 24 years old. We go to buy a boat. Go to the boat dealer. It's a $150,000 boat. We're 23 years old. It's a bright green boat. We're like, we'll take it. What's the down payment? They're like 100% financing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. 100% financing on this boat. Go home, tell my dad. I'm like, Dad, it's like 2006 at the time. Dad, we just bought a boat. He's like, oh, what'd you get? Like a little fishing boat? I was like, no, we bought a fountain, $150,000 neon green fountain. He goes, how'd you have the money for that? I was like, oh, Dad, it's 100% financing. But Dad's like, you better save all your money right now. This world is going to collapse. That two 23-year-old guys can get a boat loan showing no income. And so long and behold, of course, the real estate market and everything kind of went down as he said, but it taught me a really good lesson. So I had all this stuff and then I lost it all.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm cool though, is I got 400 grand saved up. So I saved up 400 grand from like 23 to about 26. So when the market collapsed in 08, I had like 400 grand saved up.
Cash.
I had cash and I had it in an investment account with my friend's dad, who we all have that probably friend in our life that we remember that like their dad was like, John DeMar had Ferrari. He was just the cool dad. He was super successful. And so I just wanted to be like him. Went over to his house all the time, all these things. So I invested with him because he was a financial planner. Well, things couldn't get any worse. I get a phone call in beginning of 2009. And I get a phone call, and the phone call's from my buddy. He's like, hey, did you see what happened? See what's all over the news? I'm like, no, what happened? He goes, John got arrested. He was running a Ponzi scheme.
Oh, jeez. Was he with Bernie Madoff?
Pretty much. He was running pretty much a mini Bernie Madoff. And so long story short, he ran a giant Ponzi scheme and ended up on the TV show American Greed. I lost everything. $400,000, all that I had saved for. So I had to get rid of all my nice things and move in with my brother in San Diego in 2009. And basically was just at the bottom. But I remembered what my dad said, like, oh, mortgage is a bubble. Why are you getting rid of your great career to go into,
your
fast
career
money?
making 30K.
Yep, exactly. that magical 9-to-5 career. And so it was the best thing that ever happened to me because when you're on the bottom, you kind of develop rhino skin when you get through it, And so from then on, I just grinded and, kind of worked my way all the way through the industry and, just did things the right way. And when everybody got out of the industry, I just stayed in. And by the time, 2011, 12 kind of came out, I had such a large market share that it really just kind of catapulted my business.
What made you want to stay in? Was it to like prove your dad wrong?
Yes, 100%.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I think because I grew up in such a conservative family and I've always been kind of the only entrepreneurial one, that it was just pure pride. Honestly, just pure pride of I didn't want to be sitting at every single family dinner for the rest of my life. Even though my dad's a really like quiet, humble man, I know in the back of his head, I never wanted him to be like, I was right. So it fueled me, So whether it's the best motivation or not, it's the truth.
Yeah. So how were you doing those years when you just grinded it out?
Yeah. I think what I learned was I was doing well. I was making, $1 million to $3 million a year. Just
even in 2010.
Yeah. I was making like probably $2 million in 2010. But it was W-2, and so
how were you able to have that kind of production when nobody else was able to do anything?
So what I did was, and I learned, so right now when we mail out things, it's very easy. So I did a lot of direct mail back then.
Yeah.
And what I did is I don't want to say invented because I can't take the credit for it. But what I did was I realized was if a homeowner got a piece of mail and on that piece of mail, it had a code on it and they called me with that code, I could build a personal relationship with them rather than they were just getting a bunch of mass mail. Hey, call us to get a cash out. Call us to do this. So how I ended up getting the idea was is I ended up getting a timeshare notice in the mail one day. And the timeshare notice in the mail said, hey, call us, give us this unique identifier number. And when you call us that, we'll tell you what your prize is. So I was like, okay, whatever. I was call them up and I was like, my unique identifier number is whatever, 123 ABC. And they're like, oh, you won X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, cool. And it just a light bulb went off. And I was like, why did you just call on a timeshare mailer?
By the way, a timeshare pitch is what fueled me to buy in Costa Rica. I'll tell you about that later.
See, exactly. And it's, unbelievable sales strategies on timeshares, right?
Yep.
So I was like, what if I applied this to mortgage? I was like, what if I mailed people and all I did, because I could get lists, and I just put a number on an Excel spreadsheet with whatever, some long list, and I just made up the unique identifier number. So it was like whatever the first 2 letters of their city was and some made up number behind it. And I put it all on an Excel spreadsheet and I mailed it out. And when they opened the mailer, and the mailers I did were like what you get your kid's report card in the mail, like the snap pack opens.
Yep.
And I put a unique identifier number. When they called in, I didn't want to make it a sales pitch. So what I did was it said like, please call and provide a unique identifier number to determine what you can save on your interest rate regarding your Wells Fargo loan. Because back then you could reference their current lender. There wasn't all the laws back then like there is today. So it was me and a buddy of mine who was my valet, who just happened to be the valet guy at my office building. And I was like, hey, you want to make some more money and come work for me? And I'll let you live with me, because I just couldn't pay him. So I was like, I'll give you room and board and I'll split some of the stuff with you. So put that on there and people would call and I'd be like, hey, I'm calling this mailer. Oh, hey, sir, please provide the unique identifier number, top right-hand corner. Oh, yeah, okay, it's RC1285. I just do Control F on my Excel spreadsheet, type it in. Hey, is this John Smith at 123 Main Street calling on your Wells Fargo mortgage at 6.375 rate? You got the loan at $585,000 back on July 10th of 2009. Is that correct, sir? Yes, that is. Okay, perfect. Well, it looks like here we can go ahead and refinance you and get you down from 6.75 to 5.25%. Do you still own the property? Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, let me go ahead and transfer you over and I'll have one of our assistants take all that information. Okay, great. Thank you, Brian.
That was it.
That was it.
That's the sales pitch.
That was my entire sales pitch, because everyone else was pitching them. I wanted them just to call in. So they realistically thought they were just calling their existing servicer at the time. They didn't really know it. I didn't, and it worked, and I didn't. And back then there was no, we didn't tell them we were Wells Fargo. We didn't say any of that.
Yeah,
we just, and it was completely legal. And so all of a sudden
they assumed it was Wells.
They assumed it was Wells. And then what we would do is, back in the day is, obviously when they got their loan disclosure stuff, they knew we weren't, or whatever, and they didn't care, at that point.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden it just worked. And I had spent put 50 grand on my American Express card.
I was going to say, how'd you afford to do this?
I had good credit. That was the one thing I had always done, is I had good credit. That was the one thing my dad always taught me, is keep good credit.
But you lost all the stuff. You lost your boat, dude.
I know.
You built it back up.
I did. But the best part is my boat, I didn't put it under my credit. My business partner did. So, so I was good on that side of it. And so I was good. So that ended up working. And all of a sudden I remember, never forget, it was like July of 2009. And I'd put that money on the card.
So you had nothing in July of 2009?
Nothing, dude. I was living with my brother who was going to college. And then mailer started hitting in October of 2009. December of 2009, I get my check from my company, and I had closed, I don't remember, it was 31 loans, and it was a check for $247,000.
Shut up.
It's my first, and I tell people, I went from making I had good months, 10, 12 grand in a week, but then all of a sudden it was like 250.
And this is when everybody was getting crushed.
And so that was 2010. And so kind of out of nowhere, I just kind of rose with that. And so
one marketing funnel.
That was it. It was just direct mail with a little unique identifier number at the top.
And it was just you.
It's just me. And then I ended up hiring a couple other guys that would just bang the phones. And it was just me and 4 people. And I just kind of hired and built this kind of hodgepodge group of us. And
it was just refis.
It was just refis. And I did that till 2013. And then 2013, I decided I want to start doing social media. So I got on Facebook and, got billboards, these really hilarious billboards. And then just kind of switched to purchase. And then,
so you focused on refis for literally 4 years.
Yeah, about 3-4 years. Yeah.
And you were spending what, 50K a month in direct mail?
Yep.
Making 200 grand a month.
200 to
from
400
that?
a month. Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah. 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 It was nuts. And it was just this wild ride. 'Cause I was like 28 or 29. Right. And it was just this wild ride. And, you know, and the best part was, you know, during that period of time, everything was super cheap, right? Houses were super cheap. But the mistake I made was
WealthCon's coming back to Vegas January 8th to the 11th. Now, if you've been to our events, you know how epic they are. We have the best time, not only with just great content, great speakers, but we have a lot of fun with the after parties and the masterminds and everything else. And number one, it's probably the best networking opportunity in the entire game. We have over 1,000 investors and entrepreneurs at each one, and this will be no different. In fact, this is gonna be my favorite WealthCon ever. We've got some amazing speakers coming, people like Tim Tebow, Thach Nguyen, Gabrielle Lyon, the list goes on. It is going to be an epic event, and I want to see you there. So if you're interested in attending, get your tickets now because they will not last. Go to wealthcon.org and get them today.
Everyone knows that my favorite way to build wealth is through real estate investing. That's the reason that I started Wealthy Investor, where we've trained thousands of students. But here's the thing. I've noticed that so many people fail to get started in real estate because they're worried about the money. They don't know where they're going to get the money to buy a house or flip or handle their renovations and things like that. And so they just never get started. I want to change that. And that's why I created a brand new free course that goes over 5 different ways that you could buy houses without using any of your own money today. And I'm going to give you it completely for free. All you have to do is go to wealthyinvestor.com/podcast. I've made it specifically for you. The moment you go to that link, you'll be able to go get access to it and learn how you could start buying houses today without any of your own money. And if you're somebody who already has a real estate business and who wants to scale, we want to help you too. You can click the link below and book a free strategy call with our team if that's you.
is when I was 22, I bought a house and I got it foreclosed on, right? And so I was so scared of real estate because I wasn't in loans at the time. And it was the, you know, adjustable rate, 3-year prepay, the horrible loan that you think about getting. I had gotten that loan and had gotten into foreclosure. And so I was hoarding all this cash, you know, and I didn't buy any real estate. And then like 2013, 14, I started buying some real estate again, just kind of got over that fear of it. And that was just one of the biggest regrets I've ever had in my life was I let a bad experience dictate my actions, you know, going forward, you know, which was, you know, I'd probably be completely retired today if I would have just, you know, I was sitting on a couple $1 million in the bank at 32 and I was renting an apartment.
What were you doing with the money?
I was so terrified from losing it all. I just literally sat there and put it in checking. I'm not even joking, dude. It was in my checking account. I would go in there and the bank teller would look at me and be like, do you want to put this in like a CD or something? I was like, no, just keep it there. She was like, you have like $1.8 million in your checking account earning 0.1% for like 3 years, you know? And now it's so funny because everyone comes to me for investing tips. And it's like, the reason why I know some of the stuff is because I did the stupidest thing of any man could ever do. You know, I earned like
it was the prime time
$13 in interest
to buy anything.
Yeah. I could have literally thrown it at any piece of real estate and be done, you know? So bad. So bad.
That's funny. So you said during that whole time you were W-2.
During that time I was 1099, but then Dodd-Frank came out. Dodd-Frank came out, which is what changed the mortgage industry, right? So that came out in about
Explain
2012.
people what that is.
So basically the mortgage industry, we collapsed the world, right?
Yes.
Which was 100% what we did, right? Like, you know, we used to call it the fog. If you could fog the mirror, you get a loan, right? If you could breathe, you could get a loan. So
The mirror.
yeah,
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, that was our saying back in the day, you know. And so what ended up happening was, Dodd-Frank came in, I think like 2000, quote me this, 2012, 2013, 14, kind of somewhere in that area, where basically what it did was everyone had to get licensed, right? So back in the day, you didn't have to be licensed to be a loan officer, right? There was no licensing required.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was none required. So they made licensing come in, they had to do background checks, do all this stuff. Well, as part of it, they said, hey, you guys no longer can just be independent contractors. You guys have to be W-2 employees. So when that happened, I think it was like 12 or 13, I left kind of running my own broker shop and got recruited because I was just this little unknown dude working in this little like, you know, sweatshop with my people pretty much. And I get a call from a company and they're like, hey, come work for us. And we'll give you $1 million signing bonus.
Dang.
And I was like, what? Like nobody's, you know, like you were great at sports, right? Like
Yeah.
I was a I was a math nerd, right? Nobody gives, like going to college. Sure, I got a scholarship to go to college for math, but let's just be real. Nobody's like, dude, you guys see Brian Decker's SAT scores? That guy's the man. You know, like this was my first time I got some praise. I was like, wow, I'm on the covers of these magazines, everything else. So I kind of let that make my decision and went and worked at a big mortgage company. But by doing that, I gave up my self-employed and had to become a W-2 employee. Well, I didn't know like what taxes really were at that point and what they would do on a W-2. Because I hadn't been paying them. So long story short, I go W-2 and all of a sudden I see 50% of my income going away every single month. I'm like, sweet, I made 100 grand this month. Why is my check 41 grand? You know, it's because state taxes, Fed taxes. And so did that from 2014 to 2019. But it was really good because one, I was able to get a work alongside the CEOs of some of the biggest mortgage companies in the world. Like Anthony Shea, who's the CEO of Loan Depot, was one of my mentors. Victor of Guaranteed Rate, like all these guys that were, billionaires now, I got to sit with them like I'm sitting you, and it really helped me now as being an entrepreneur because I really got to see firsthand what it's like to scale a company. Now, obviously, doing it and seeing it are two completely different things, but I maybe overstayed my stay a little bit on the W-2 world just because of the taxes, but I just call it my learning, it's what I paid to learn.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of where it was today.
So in 2019, what happened? So
2019, I decided to leave and go start my own mortgage company because I had gotten, so when you kind of operate, when I was at Loan Depot, kind of operate and you get like a profit and loss statement for your center you run, right? You kind of run like a branch, for lack of a better word. Well, what they messed up in doing was they sent me the profit and loss statement, and you have two profit and loss statements. The one that shows you what you were supposed to see and the one that shows you what corporate really makes on you, right?
Okay.
And so I get this profit and loss statement and I look at it and I was like, okay, my office brought in whatever it was, $17 million in revenue and the profitability was $8 million, right? And that $8 million was after I made my $2 million W-2. And I ran all of this. They didn't do anything. It was me. I ran it with 35 people. I was like, what? Like my eyes just opened up.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh shoot, the rates I'm selling, there's a huge margin that they're making me sell these rates at. And I just remember thinking I felt so betrayed. Like I'm doing all of this and running all of this. That doesn't seem very equitable. You got to make your money as an owner, but really? Like basically I brought in 10 million in profit and did all the work and you give me 2 and you keep 8. This sounds a little bit unfair at this point.
It would be one thing if they were providing the leads and hiring and all that stuff.
But it wasn't. It was, I paid my own marketing dollars. Like I did all this stuff, right? And so I ended up deciding I'm going to leave. Well, mind you, I was the poster child for this company. They're a publicly traded company.
This is Loan Depot?
Loan Depot, right? So, I was spokesman doing all this stuff and ended up leaving. And, we'll never speak ill of any company, but I learned my lesson that I left and in leaving, I got sued.
Really?
Right? Oh, bro. I just realized that there's levels to life and, making $2 million a year and you're the number one dude at a 8,000 person company and you leave and you say, hey, I'm going to go start my own thing because I want to make more money.
They don't like that.
They don't like that. And let me just tell you that when you're worth $1 billion, the things that you can do and say, you can say whatever you want in a lawsuit. And it's my job to prove that it's not true.
Yeah.
So I basically got sued and spent pretty much almost my entire life savings battling in court.
Wow.
While at the same time, and this is where I learned the truth about press. There's no truth on what gets printed in the press, right? So they, got out there, got all these fictitious stories out there, whatever. I get it. They had to protect it. I don't hold any ill will against anybody. Spent about $2 million in legal fees fighting while I'm trying to start a business, why I got 2 little kids at home. And it just was a brutal 18 months, but I ended up winning, ended up coming out on the other side of it. Which is why I'm kind of not as scared to take risk now, and I really respect the levels in life,
Did you end up getting your legal fees back or anything?
Nope. I learned that what ends up happening is in the world of
They just settled.
You just settle. You go all the way. We fought with the state. We go to a court trial and they say, hey, Brian, you have two options. One, you can take this to trial and you can win. And it's going to be $2 to $3 million in court fees to go through a full-blown trial. Or you can settle and you can pay a $5,000 donation to the state and move on. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty easy, right? You swallow your pride and you do the other part. And that's where I really learned that I will never again underestimate like the person I'm going up against. Like power's a real thing, man. And when you are a billionaire, the power that you have, it is very different than just some kid that makes 7 figures and is good at selling people things over the phone. You know, there's a different skill set there, you know? And so it humbled me. It was the best thing I ever went through. But it also told me everything that I will not be if I ever get to the point of power.
Right.
You know? Like if I get somebody that outgrows my company, I'll wish them the best and be there to support them, you know?
In my mind, you know, as guys level up in my business, obviously I'm not a billionaire, but I'm always thinking, man, how do I like create a new opportunity to, you know, fill this guy's capacity of what's possible, right? That's kind of what I'm like, man, why wouldn't you do everything to, I guess, keep you in the fold in a different way?
Exactly. You know, and I think it comes down to the thing of partners, right? Like I have a couple different businesses and my mortgage company now, I don't run it anymore, right? I have 2 partners. I still own majority interest, but my 2 partners, one of them was a loan officer that worked with me for a long time. The other one was my processor when I got into the business 17 years ago. Well, when I built my business, I gave them equity in our mortgage company. So they owned 35% between the 2 of them. Well, now they run it. Rather than me just saying, let me just keep all this and be greedy, you guys bleed with me, you'll earn in, invest in, and now I don't have to do any of the day-to-day operations of the company anymore. They have a vested interest to have it grow and they run it fantastically. And now they don't leave me to go start their own mortgage company. They just run mine because owning 35% of mine is more net worth for them than owning 100% of theirs that they have to start with, right? And so I think a lot of times people hold equity too close to the chest. I think when you realize you have somebody in your team that has a superpower, you really need to understand that they're never going to treat this business like it's their own unless it's their own, right? And that opportunity cost that's lost when you just hold that equity so close to the chest for somebody that's deserving of it, you really, you know, kind of put the lid on your growth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think too at that point they were public, so there's less stuff you could really do.
Yep, exactly. And for me in that case, it was just kind of like too, and I think that's where culture really comes in to play too. I think it's when you find those people on your team that are just culture rock stars, you'll do anything to keep them, you know? And I think that's, my thing wasn't that I didn't like Loan Depot. It's just culturally, it wouldn't be what I would want for my company. And so why am I, you know, and you know, it's tech companies, the multiple you get on a tech company is astronomical. The multiple you get on a sales org ain't that great. you know, it's just, you know, it's a book of business and people that are independent contractors, you know? So
that makes sense. So you end up doing your own thing and then pandemic hits. How was that?
I remember thinking, well, it was funny when that happened because that signing bonus I told you I had my best friend in the world. We were in the mortgage game together and we literally met and we were shopping at Nordstrom's. I was joking around all the time. He's been my best friend for 20 years. And we met shopping at Nordstrom's. We were both sitting there picking out the same pair of jeans. I'm not even joking. And he was like, "What's up, dude?" I was like, "What's up, man?" So
you like jeans?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, "Oh wow," buying Affliction shirts when they were cool and all that stuff. And so we ended up becoming boys, and we ended up we had a mutual friend. And so when I got my signing bonus, he had come to me, and this is like 2014, and he goes, "Brian, I got this great idea." I'm like, "What, Bernard?" And he's super smart, dude. He's like, "We're gonna get into cannabis." And I go, "I don't smoke weed." And he's like, "Me either." I was like, why are we going to get into cannabis? He goes, "Dude, Santa Ana and Orange County, they're going to be the first area outside of Oakland that's going to issue cannabis licenses." And I said, okay, cool. That sounds awesome. He's like, well, so I found out a way that we can get one. I'm like, well, how is it going to work? And he goes, well, they're going to issue 17 licenses and there's 19 possible locations that you are deemed to have a license. And in each one of these 19 locations, there's 20 or 30 suites that's available. But what happens is say in your building right here, say there's 20 suites in this building and you, Ryan, get by lottery, your number pooled. Guess what? Anybody else in this building that applied for the application is null and void if their ball gets pulled. You can only have one person in any one of these 19 buildings get a license. It voids anybody else's application within that building because they didn't want these centralized pot centers, right? They just wanted one per building. So my buddy Bernard goes, dude, I got this idea. I found one of the buildings. It's freeway frontage right on the 55 freeway in Newport Beach on Santa Ana border. And he goes, I figured out how we can do it. We can rent the entire building. And I go, it's a pretty good idea. He goes, problem is we got to sign a lease on this thing and we got to sign a lease whether we get the license or not. And he goes, well, technically, we have a 17 out of 19 chance of getting it because there's 19 buildings, and if we take one of the whole buildings down, we got a pretty good chance. I was like, well, what do we have to take this thing down? But he's like, well, it's $40,000 a month in rent and we got to sign a 12-month lease regardless. I'm like, and mind you, at the time, he had just gone through bankruptcy. He has no money, right?
Shopping
and I had
at
just
Nordstrom.
yep, exactly. Spent all of his money. And I had just got my signing bonus for $1 million. And so I had maybe $1 million in my account, got a couple of 500 grand after taxes. And he's like, dude, go in this thing with me. And I was like, all right, let me look into it. So long story short, I agreed to do it. And I have perfect credit. I go in, I'm 27 years old at the time. And I was like, because what we knew was if you got one of these licenses, which it was about 20 grand to apply for the license, what you ended up getting was when you got that license, you could immediately turn around and sell a license for $3 million.
Oh, geez.
Immediately. So I thought to myself, okay,
This is a good
17
bet.
out of 19 chance. Here's all these other things.
It's going to cost you $500,000.
$500,000, put my credit on. This is a no-brainer. So we go through it and I put the money up and I go, dude, first off, I have my loan officer license. I cannot be tied because cannabis then was not cannabis today. I said, everything's got to be in your name. I cannot be tied to this. I'm just going to give you the money so I don't want to get in trouble. All right, cool. Perfect. Put it up. So the day of the lottery comes and he's like, hey man, do you want to come to the lottery? And I was like, dude, I'm too nervous. I'm like, no, bro, I cannot do this. Like, and mind you, I had just gotten engaged to my wife at the time and she does not know about this, mind you. Does not know because she's not exactly the biggest fan of my friend Bernard. Like, so I'm like, that's great, And so he ends up going there and he calls me up. He's like, bro, we got a problem. I'm like,
jeez.
Oh, what? He goes, dude, there's 700 balls in this lottery. And I'm like, how is there 700 balls? Dude, you told me max 100. He goes, I miscalculated.
What do you do?
The last thing you ever want to do is somebody that miscalculated. He goes, bro, you know how we took down a whole building? I'm like, yeah. He goes, people were smarter than us. What they did is there was no requirement that there was only one application per unit. So they did the smarter thing. They rented one unit and submitted 50 applications on that one unit.
Dang.
And so every application was 20 grand. So they took 20 grand and they did it 50 times. So they spent $1 million bucks. And guess what? Now they were only on the hook for a $1,300 a month lease. And I was like, versus us, now I'm on the hook for a $480,000 lease. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And he's like, all right, bro. He's like, I'm gonna call you after this thing's done. And I'm thinking to myself, you've gotta be kidding me. Like, you're already bankrupt. I'm like just getting married. I'm like, oh my gosh. All right. So I'm like, and this is mind you, this is a big news event. This is the first like lottery. It's all over the news. So I get a call at like 2:00. Calls me up. I'm like, what's up, dude? He's like, all right, dude. Do you want the good news or do you want the bad news? And I was like, give me the bad news, bro. He's like, there is no bad news. We got our ball drawn. And I freak out. I'm like, what? He goes, bro, there was 15 balls drawn. There's 2 left to be drawn. We have 1 ball out of 700 and our ball gets drawn. He goes, bro, I go running down the aisle. He goes, Snoop Dogg was there. This person was there. And he goes, bro, we got our ball. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so stoked. So like, I'm ecstatic. I'm like, all right, cool. Sweet. We're going to sell this thing, right? He's like, oh no, dude, we're going to build this thing out.
Oh, jeez.
What do you mean we're going to build this thing out? You have no money. He goes, dude, we'll figure it out. And I was like, dude, I can't be in this. But to his credit, so over the next 5 years, bro, 5 years, he literally just grinded. Because before this was like, it wasn't allowed to be growing. He was growing. He was renting storage units in Paris, California, and growing marijuana and selling them to the Hells Angels and all these people to pay to renovate, to build our dispensary. And if you look at the dispensary today, it's called People's. And basically, going with the COVID story, I get a call right during the pandemic happens. And he's like, hey, dude, I want to buy you out. Mind you, I haven't gotten a single dollar from this. Not a single dollar, okay? So it's 5 years of $500,000 tied up because it was still illegal. So it was only for medical cards back then. Well, in 2020, beginning of 2020, California changed it and made it recreational. So if a store was bleeding like $100,000 a month, if this is a 40,000 square foot store, it looked like Whole Foods inside this thing. Geez, like it is baller, right? And everybody else is like selling out of a smoke shop, right?
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that goes recreational. The very first day it goes rec, the store does $190,000 in a day in sales. And he's like, holy crap. So this thing starts cranking. So about 5 months into it, he calls me up and he's like, hey, because I own 20%. He's like, hey, I got partners that came in. We want to buy you out. All right, what do you want to buy me out for? He was like, I'll give you $3 million. I was like, no, I know this stuff's more than that. But I was just so busy with doing other stuff. And I was like, all right. He's like, what number? I was like, double it, 6 million. He's like, all right, I'll give you 6 million. All right, cool. So after taxes, I end up realizing I get about $3 million. And that started the pandemic. Going to the story and why a month and a half later, he ends up selling it for $80 million. I got hosed.
You did get hosed.
Hosed, bro. So I took 6 million instead of 16. And this is my best friend since we were 18 years old. Right?
Dang.
And today we're best friends again. I forgive him. You know, I learned he had a lot of people in his ear and he's come back. And I mean, you learn to forget and do things. And obviously he's now taken this and now it's now worth like $600 million, the company, between all this stuff. And so I know someday if I ever need that phone call, hey dude, Bernard, I need $20 million to start this company. He knows I have that favor coming on it, but going into the pandemic, I ended up getting $3 million after taxes to go start into the pandemic. So I had two choices. Do I just sit there and chill on $3 million and just kind of rest this out, spend some time with my family? Or do I just keep grinding on my mortgage company, right?
If you're watching this show, my guess is you're probably an entrepreneur who's trying to grow your business. And for me, the best thing I ever did to grow my business was build my personal brand on social media. It's allowed me to get more revenue, it's allowed me to raise more capital, and it's allowed me to hire better talent. And if you are not currently creating content for your brand, you're missing out and your competition is. So if you want to learn to grow, my advice is to create a podcast. Now, there's a lot that goes into building a podcast and why I believe it's the best way. So I've actually created a free training that I want you to go check out. If you go to pinedamedia.com/podcast, you can go access the free training right now and see how a podcast is going to be the best decision to grow your personal brand today. So go check it out by clicking the link below, and I'll see you in the training.
So go into the pandemic and just grind it out. And unlike a lot of people that got a little break in the pandemic, you know how it was. You're in real estate.
Yep.
It was just like they threw gasoline on the fire for us.
It was gangbusters.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was just nuts. And so I was left with the decision, okay, I have money. I'm doing this mortgage company thing, but I also had this big problem. Like a great problem they have. I have $3 million and I got to put it somewhere. Well, I don't want to put it in the bank account. I know what's happening. You know, they're turning on the Fed printer. What do I do with $3 million? Right. So thus what led me down my crazy journey down crypto.
You put it in crypto.
Yeah, I did. Or a good majority of it. So yeah, it was a wild ride. I mean, did you guys notice what happened with you guys when COVID hit? Did you guys see the same thing that we saw on mortgage too?
Oh, for sure. But during the pandemic, everyone was super scared, obviously. Right. And I was sitting on 50 house flips. So I had a lot of hard money loans and debt out there. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go down, but we'll find out. And then, sure enough, like you said, gasoline went on it. And I I kept buying throughout the pandemic,
Yeah.
even when we were locked up. And so ended up being the right move. And
Yeah.
same thing. Gangbusters, dude. It was nice.
Yeah. It was. And I think that's why it's funny now. You see a lot
And I was buying crypto then too.
Yeah. See?
Yep.
And what was that thing in your mind was there one thing that changed your mind where you went from being like, Bitcoin's a scam to Bitcoin is, real value? What was that change for you?
Well, I started buying Bitcoin back in 2017.
Okay.
So I had already been in crypto for a little bit and been through a cycle.
Yep.
And so I went through the whole thing of buying in 2017 to then it crashing. And you're like, all right, this stuff's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
To then, the pandemic hits. And I think at that time, Bitcoin was like $3 or $4 grand.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like that's crazy. But I was still worried about my own business.
Yeah.
So I didn't have $3 million that I just got.
Yeah.
I was like, what am I going to do here?
Yeah.
And, sure enough, as Bitcoin started to go back up, it was back at 20 again.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, let me go check my wallets because I still held on to all of it because I was just like, this is worthless now. Might as well just hold it. And I was like, dang, I'm back to like where it was. This is great.
Yeah.
And then I was making, really good money flipping and everything else. And so I ended up buying more and more and more. And I had like, over $1 million of crypto. And, at that point, that was when I really started to study it because I was starting to see, I'm like, man, they're just printing money like there's no tomorrow. And then I started reading all these books from all these Bitcoin and crypto advocates. And I was like, this makes sense why people like Bitcoin so much.
Yep.
Because it can't be, printed. It can't be manipulated the way that the current system is.
Yep. And I think that's, it's funny because my brother started mining Bitcoin at 13. I mean, when he was in 2013, excuse me. And I remember him calling me in 2016 and was like, Brian, you got to buy crypto. And I was like, what? Like, you got to buy Bitcoin. I was like, okay, where do I go get them? And he's like, dude, you just go online. This is how you do it. And I was like, I am not buying internet money. That is stupid. This is ridiculous. And so I ended up buying like 2 or something. Of course, bought them at like $19,000, like every other person did. Right? So I had this like horrible connotation of it.
Yep.
And then what changed it all for me was when I saw Michael Saylor.
Yep.
And this is what he was going through. And when he got valued as his company and he got valued on Wall Street and he had $1 billion in cash sitting with MicroStrategies and they gave him 90% on his cash. And he was like, wait, you're saying my company you're not even giving me dollar for dollar on my cash? And they're like, no, if you're not growing at 20% per year, we're discounting your book value. And he was like, wait, so you're telling me having $1 billion in cash is actually hurting my valuation? And so that's what led him down that journey. And I remember seeing him on an interview and I was like, well, I don't got $1 billion in cash, but I got 3 million. So whatever he's going to do, you know what? I'm not nearly as smart as this dude. So let me just follow what he did. So, I owe Michael Saylor obviously a debt of gratitude on that. But I was like you, I was gobbling up Ethereum at $200, gobbling up Bitcoin at like $3,000. And that was a wild ride,
Yeah.
We all went on that ride. And I think just like anything else, I think that for many people, I think it got a bad rap, but I saw this video. I don't know if you've ever seen the clip, and it's Bill Gates on the David Letterman show. And this is like, I don't know, 1990 something, 97 or something like that. And Bill Gates is sitting down and David Letterman's like, so tell me about this new thing you got. It's called like
the internet,
an email.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's this electronic way that you can type on a computer and you can send a note through somebody's computer. And so David Letterman's like, so how is that better than just picking up the phone and calling them? And he's like, oh no, because you can just send it and you don't have to call them. And he goes, so you're telling me you don't want to talk to people anymore? And he's like, no, you're not understanding it. And he goes, wait, he's like, and Bill, didn't you just do this grand thing where you streamed a baseball game through the internet, right? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, wow, that sounds great, Bill. He's like, can't you just turn on the TV and watch it? And he's like, yeah, but you can do this anytime you want, because this is before you could record baseball games, right? And he was like, I don't know about this, Bill, but I sure as heck don't think your Microsoft company's really going anywhere there, bud. And it just and I remember watching that and thinking about it. And I was just like, That's Bitcoin for a lot of people right now,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just, it's crazy on like how I feel like you can kind of divide society sometimes between people that believe in Bitcoin and people that don't believe in Bitcoin, you know?
Yep.
It's a trip.
It's crazy, man. Yeah, I'm a big believer in Bitcoin and crypto. You know, we have an NFT project called Tykes. That's been amazing. We were the #1 traded project back over a year ago when obviously the market, and the everything with crypto was way different.
Yeah.
Since then, obviously, we've had FTX collapse. We've had
a couple little black eyes.
like all these different things happen in the crypto space and just the normal US market space too, right? That's what I always tell people. You know, I'm like, dude, I can't control what happens in the crypto world, but the technology itself and the things that we can control, at least in Tykes, those are in our control, right? But we cannot control just the hype and the speculation and all the bull crap that has kind of defined the industry for the last decade. But that being said, I'm a big believer in crypto. I think it's going to impact real estate. I think it's going to impact, the way we exchange money. I think it's going to impact, like Bitcoin's been having a surge lately because of speculation for, ETFs and everything. So I'm a big believer.
Yeah. And I think people forget a lot of times is I try to study history a lot, right? And so when a new technology or a new investment class comes into the world, it behaves very similarly, right? So we look at the stock market, right? So really in the early 1900s was the first time people actually had the ability to own shares in a publicly traded company. Before that, it was really reserved, just kind of how the elite is now getting into an IPO before it ends up hitting the stock market. Right?
Yeah.
Well, we all know what happens when human beings were allowed to buy publicly traded shares of stocks we had the roaring 20s, and then we had the greatest financial collapse of United States history in the Depression, right? Stock market went gangbusters, turned over. Did the stock market go away? No. Did it get a major reset? Of course it did with the Great Recession. Then you look back at the next kind of real big thing that was introduced into technology as human beings. The internet. .com bubble, right? Goes up, blows up. Amazon goes crazy. Amazon loses 97% of its value. Did the internet go away? No, it didn't. But it was the first time that people were able to really invest in the internet. Then we have crypto. Crypto does the same thing. And so I think it's really important that people have to understand that just because we don't remember those previous cycles, anytime you have a new investment class that comes into play, you get greed, you get fear, you get resets. But if you invested in stocks in 1920, you are killing it today.
Yeah.
You invest in the internet in the 1990s, you're killing it today if you chose good blue chips.
Yeah.
Same thing with crypto.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. People just end up, the problem with crypto, whatever, to say the last cycle, is that people are just gambling.
Yes.
Right? People are like, oh, well, what's the next 10x altcoin or the next 10x NFT and the next whatever, right? They're not even really crypto advocates. They're just
sports bettors.
Yeah, they're just like, dude, what's the next big hype thing that I can make money on, right? And I think the differences between guys like you or me or whoever else who like understand like where it's going, you're like, okay, this technology, I understand why people would need it, why it's useful, how it could be incorporated into the world later on. And then even like with NFT projects, like I said, most of these NFT projects, Gary Vee even said it, right? He was like, yo, 99% of them are going to zero, right? And then there's going to be a few that remain come next bull run. And it's like, for me, even as it relates to Tykes, we still do so many different things. Like we just funded a deal. We've had different investments made in the community. We've had our members buy hundreds of acres of land together. We've had one of our members do a $300,000 land deal that he made a profit on. We had one of our members just launch his own coaching program and already made 7 figures.
Shoot.
We had one of our members, I merged his business into mine.
Oh,
so now we have all of our design, done through that. And this was all just happening in the community.
Yeah.
But
so you do it very similar to like how like a fundraise would go, in essence, like where you're basically putting an idea in the NFT project, everyone invests in it, take that capital and make an investment in the business, and the profit throws through there and distributes to it.
Yeah. And so like when I first started Tykes, the original idea behind it was obviously community and getting a community of people who believed in real estate and crypto together, right? So I wanted to educate the people who are just in real estate who have no idea about crypto. Hey, you're going to learn about it here. And then I wanted the crypto people who are passionate about that to get into the real world and learn about real estate, right? And we've accomplished that. But the main thing that it's become now being, let's just say a little over 12 months, is that, a lot of it is like, well, how do we make money today, right? We do that through deal flow and relationships and training and everything else. And so now it's become a place for deals. So people can pitch their businesses that they're trying to get funded or buy. People can pitch their real estate deals. We have this thing called the Tyke Tank where all of that happens. We're actually going to film a session at my next event where it's going to be like Shark Tank.
Oh, cool.
Where, people are going to pitch their deals, whether it be a business or real estate.
That's smart.
Yeah. So we got a lot of things that we do. And we created our own currency that they get if they stake their NFT. And so they can use that to go to my events. They can use it to buy products from other members. I got $1 million plus home that they can stay at using the coin.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff in the ecosystem. And so that's why it cracks me up when, critics will be like, oh, well, the price is so far down. I'm like, bro, for one, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
If you bought a project strictly based on price because that there is no intangible value or no utility.
Yes.
Then okay, whatever. That's on you for being a gambler.
Exactly.
But if you want to use it, the utility is there.
When people associate NFT, they think monkey picture, right?
Yeah.
And they don't realize that a non-fungible token, like a driver's license, is going to be an NFT someday, right?
Yeah.
A passport, an NFT. Deed to a piece of property is an NFT.
Yep.
And it's just like how everybody thinks crypto is just a bunch of different currencies. They're not all trying to be money. That's crazy. It's like saying every stock's the exact same thing. No, not at all. You have dividend stocks, you have tech stocks, you have penny stocks. And so I think there's just a lot of miseducation around that kind of stuff. You know?
No, for sure. And it's so new, right? Yeah. It's like David Letterman with Bill Gates, where I just don't get it, dude. And it's like, Bill's like, dude, all right, whatever. You'll get it as time goes on. But it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't even really talk about crypto a lot on social media. Not because I don't think it's important, but it's because anytime I talk about it, especially now when it's the dead period, people are just like, it falls on deaf ears. They're like, why are we even talking about this? it's not going to 10X tomorrow. I don't want to hear about it.
Yep. It's not instant gratification. And then in about 7 months, it's going to be some of your best performing videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just the way, it's just funny, but that's just
talk about that. Why is that?
So one of the things I think that people really need to understand is why people love Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is, whether you're Anthony Pompliano or Michael Saylor, you kind of have what they call as, Bitcoin maxis or altcoiners, right? And so it'd be like if people, hey, you know what? I only want to invest in blue chip S&P 500 stocks, or hey, I'm a penny stocks kind of guy, right? So your Bitcoin are your S&P 500 blue chip kind of value stock investors. And the reason what happens is we don't know obviously who invented Bitcoin, but what we do know is that Bitcoin is built on an algorithm. And what happens is there's a certain amount of supply of Bitcoin that gets released into the market every single day, right? And what happens is approximately every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that gets released every single day is cut in half. And that's called the Bitcoin halving. So the way I always like to explain it to people is if you knew on your street where Ryan lives that there's 100 houses available for sale, and I knew that on April 17th of 2024.
It's my birthday, by the way.
Oh, really? Look at that.
There you go.
What a guess.
Yep.
And we knew BlackRock was going to come in and buy 50 houses on your street on April 17th, right? What are we going to think is going to happen to those house prices on April 18th? Probably going to go up in value potentially a little bit because half the supply was immediately gone.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's only two things that affect price: supply and demand. That's it. Right? Yep. And so whoever developed the algorithm with Bitcoin made it so that there's a fixed amount of Bitcoin that'll ever be issued, 21 million of them. And that every approximately 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that gets put into circulation gets cut in half. And that's called a Bitcoin halving. And just like real estate cycles or just like any type of cycle out there, the Bitcoin halving is kind of like the celebratory party for the next bull run coming. Because the adoption rate of Bitcoin is growing faster than the adoption rate of the internet grew, the adoption rate of anything in humankind. It's growing about 130% per year in the adoption rate. So if we look at it and we say, hey, all right, there's roughly 3 to 4 million Bitcoin that could ever be still put into existence. We know that the amount of people that want Bitcoin every single year has been growing. And we know the amount of Bitcoin that's getting put into circulation is decreasing, and that's going to be 50% less. So, I know my supply is going down. I know my demand's going up. And then on these outside factors, I know that we now have the largest institutions in the world. And people don't realize, like BlackRock, for example, there's like 4 countries in the world that have more money than BlackRock has. I mean, they are such a massive thing. And now you have them, Larry Fink, who is like starting a Bitcoin ETF, and Invesco and WisdomTree and Fidelity. These are the people that 5 years ago would fire their employees for saying the word Bitcoin, right? And so where I think that a lot of people need to understand is if you have some of the smartest minds and the people that control the most amount of money in the world changing their belief on this asset, you may want to wake up and pay attention to it. And especially knowing that we're 5-6 months away from what has proven 3 previous times when this happens, a year from that date, you're double or triple for what you buy it for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. And that's how I see it. And one thing I was saying when, we were first launching Tykes is I brought up the halving because I'm like, guys, this is just literally what happens, right? And so I told people, I'm like, we are going to go into a crypto bear market. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And, we didn't expect that it would come because of FTX and freaking, what were all the other things?
Celsius,
Voyager,
BlockFi, pretty much everyone but Coinbase.
So everyone goes under and just all this random, then, interest rates double and the stock market crashes and, all this stuff happens. But anyways, regardless of that happening, it was still going to go into a bear market.
Yeah.
That's just what happens. And what happens is we always come back up into a bull, after the halving. And so for me, what's interesting is I look at what we're doing with Tykes and I'm like, okay, we're in the bear. What do you do in a bear? You just build.
Yep.
Just like you were saying back in 2009, 2010 in your business. Everybody else is staying away from real estate. They're scared. No, everybody thinks it's the worst asset class ever. What do? You just build. You build, you buy, and you just keep on trucking.
Yep.
Because I'll tell you this, the big problem that I had in the last bull run was that I wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
Right? Like in 2017, I got burned and I'm like, oh, this sucks. And then by the time 2020 hit, Bitcoin was back and it was, 20K, 30K. I was like, oh man, dude, like, why didn't I buy it at 3K?
Yep.
And I wasn't prepared. And then now that I have call it almost 8 years of, experience in it, I'm like, okay, dude, this next one, I'm gonna kill it.
Yeah.
If I don't make 8 figures in crypto in the next couple of years, there's a problem.
Yeah. And I think that's what people don't. Crypto is the middle class's answer to be able to compete on a playing field that they don't have any other chance of ever competing against.
The middle class is never going to get rich from stocks.
No, they're never. It's absolutely impossible.
Yep.
With these, the rate at which computers trade and the manipulation that can occur within the stock market and the OTC counter, they don't have the option. But I can really confidently say that if somebody buys Bitcoin today, within the next 18 months, you're going to be able to sell that for 3 times as much money.
I agree.
Right?
Yep.
Like, name one thing you could say about that right now.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the things that I think that people are always looking at. And I'm sure you get it on your socials and stuff like that. And people, oh, well, you know what? Like, that's easy for you because you have the money to do this. Well, everybody has the money to be able to buy a fraction of a Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. Whatever you choose to invest your money in. Because even for you, I was thinking, you had that $3 million.
Yeah.
Why didn't you buy real estate? What made you buy Bitcoin?
I did. I divided it up.
Okay.
So I did a third, a third, a third.
Okay.
So what I did is I took a third and invested in my business, my mortgage company.
Okay.
Took a third and I bought a bunch of Airbnb properties.
Okay.
And I took a third and invested it into crypto.
Got it.
So I did a third, a third, a third. So now, and so
what performed the best?
Crypto. Crypto went from 1 million to 7 million. That's actually how I kind of grew my socials, was because every single week I posted what my accounts were doing over the time, and that really grew it. And then, but the only other thing is that my real estate, I bought 3 really cool Airbnbs out in Nashville. One of them's probably one of the best performing Airbnbs in all of Nashville. I did a really cool, I I did a really themed one. I bought it in 2020 and themed it out. So every room is like designed. It's like a bachelorette haven. So downstairs it has like, with, your wife, like I know with my wife, when her girls are going to come over and we're going to go somewhere, they all like to get ready together. They go in my wife's bathroom, they listen to their music, they'll sip a cocktail and they'll get their makeup and they'll do their makeup together, right? So I had the idea and I bought this place in Nashville and I turned the bottom downstairs into what I call as a babe cave, right? So I put 8 makeup stations with lights, like DJ booth, bar, all the stuff down there. And then what I did is it's a 5-bedroom, and then each one of the bedrooms, I did it as a designer theme, a Louis Vuitton room, a Prada room, a this room, a that room. Got it all spray painted with graffiti artists, pink, and did all this. So I spent I bought the place for about 1.3. I spent about $300,000 into it. So I was into it for about 1.6, and I got a great rate, got 2.875 on it. That's my mortgage, like $4,000 on it. And that thing cranks like $25,000 a month and off of it. And so now looking back, I mean, real estate did very well too, because I was able to cost seg it, right? And get a $600,000 right off there. And then it cash flows for me on that. So that's why I think it's a lot of people, I think sometimes they're like all crypto or all real estate or all stocks. And it's like, for me, I try to be diversified because cycles beat down different industries at different times, right? Like real estate and mortgage is getting the crap kicked out of it right now. Crypto's getting the crap kicked out of it right now. But guess what? A lot of like the services industry, like plumbers, electricians, those are doing fantastic right now, right? Yeah. So I think it's that I've learned as I've gotten older that don't ever regret being like, oh man, I wish I had all 3 million in crypto. Yeah, sure. Did I wish I had all 3 million in crypto in November of 2021? Yeah, of course I did. But in December of last year, I sure as heck glad I didn't have all 3 million in crypto. Yeah, you know what I mean?
No, I'm with you. I've realized that too along the way. We're both entrepreneurs with different industries and businesses. But I've realized like the reason I've been able to stay afloat and keep growing is that when one thing is not doing well, things that could be in or out of my control, right? Like if you were in the crypto industry and FTX and all those things happened, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing you could do about it, right? That's part of it, right? And so if you're only in that, it's like, bro, these next 2 years, they're going to be rough if that's your business.
Yep.
Same thing with, hey, if I only am a realtor, right? Like, oh, dude, like, rates doubled. People don't want to sell. And then, it's hard to qualify buyers. It gets really difficult. And so for me, I've looked at the diversity of my businesses the last couple of years, and I see, man, there's months where some businesses lose money.
Yep.
Then there's months where these other ones pick up the slack. Very rarely are they all cranking on just full cylinder at once.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things too, is where we got a really good picture of this is when we look at Amazons or Apples, or I think because back in the day, I know it was like, don't ever let your golden goose go. Focus on one thing, be an expert at one thing, and that's it. And I agree to that. I definitely think that
mortgage was that for you.
That was for me, right? But then once you get that golden goose running, use those profits to branch off into these other ancillary businesses. And that works very well. Where I think a lot of people now are been afraid, at least in the mortgage world, they're like, oh, I just got to do loans and just grind this thing out. Well, you look at, like, for example, Microsoft, you look at your Amazons, they have their cloud business, they have their streaming business, they have, their products business, they have their services business. And just like what you said, they're just on a larger scale of what we do. They have sometimes look at Meta and their whole debacle when they did their whole AI thing. And they lost like $10 billion building out their AI metaverse, right?
Yeah.
But their ads made $40 billion in revenue.
Yeah, they'll be all right.
And they're going to be completely fine. And so I think
and they still might be right.
Yeah.
It's just their timing
was off.
Yeah.
And who knows? I mean, and like I said, you look at it, and my grandfather always said one thing to me, and I said, hey, how did you know what to invest in? Not that he was wealthy, but he was just always a very smart guy. And he said, I heard one time that you learn from the mistakes of your grandfather and you invest in the likes of your children. And so I've always kind of taken that approach. Let me learn from the things that my grandfather did with investing, but let me take those concepts and apply it to the things that my kids are interested in, right? And so I think I look at it, are my kids going to be more likely to want to spend time in the metaverse, or are they going to be more likely to want to go camping with their friends? Probably going to spend more time in the metaverse, right? Like as much as I would like to not think that's the reality of it, that's likely the reality of it,
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. So how has it been, the last year with rates doubling as a loan officer? These guys are getting killed.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things that I think a lot of times people sugarcoat things a lot of times, right? I was actually, kind of talking with your Jonathan on your team, who's fantastic, right? We were kind of going back and forth with stuff. And I was telling him, I said, I think that a lot of times what people need to hear is they need to hear the truth a lot of times. And I feel like a lot of times people, if they're in a public eye, they try to like, oh, well, we're doing great because we're doing this, right? Tell you straight up. I know the biggest mortgage company owners right now. Not one single one of them is making a single cent right now. Just is what it is, right? And for us, we stayed in the black and did really well up until probably about June of this year.
Okay.
Then in June of this year, you just have to understand that you just cannot make profit when you're going through an interest rate environment like this. But that's also why in February of 2022, I really made a lot of very strategic moves to cut all costs that were not essential costs. So I chopped things down because I learned. I went through and like, why do I have 7 subscriptions to this? Why do I do this? Why do I have a coffee service that's $900 a month? And I can have Susie do this. Like, why do I have 3 people doing this? Like, I made smarter decisions because it's one of those things I would rather than starve all my employees, right? I'd rather let 30 of them flourish than 60 of them starve, right?
Yeah,
you have to make those hard decisions. And so the other thing I learned is that there's a reason why you save money in good times. It's so you can survive the bad times, right? Yep. And in the mortgage industry is a very funny industry. Is you can have 10 years of insane bull markets, guys making millions of dollars, 18 months of bad rates and they go out of business.
They're toast.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's because they have no diversification. They sell a widget that they do not control the price of it, right? The Fed determines interest rates is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So what we did in the mortgage side and what I really decided is I looked at it and said, okay, let's be very strategic in our approach. And I know that I'm going to lose money for about a year. I know that. And I planned that. And we also really diversified with locations. So I got offices in Tennessee, offices in Alabama. People are still buying houses in Alabama. They're still buying houses in Tennessee because, an 8% rate on a $325,000 home doesn't really hurt the payment as much as an 8% rate on a $3.5 million home. Right.
Yeah.
And so I diversified based on location. And then I also really learned at applying other verticals. And I think I saw the writing on the wall because I've gone through these cycles. And then that's when kind of Tarek and I really when we looked at ancillary businesses, that's when I kind of really started launching our energy efficiency company. And we went that route. And so that could supplement. And so I put other verticals in place that worked harmoniously with my client because, as you know, the most expensive thing a business is going to spend is the client acquisition cost.
Yep, your marketing.
Right? That's it. And if you can find a way to deliver valuable services in multiple revenue streams to that client, that's how you survive. And that's how you can actually flourish, as long as you're making sure that those services are at a standard that the client expects, even though they're coming from the same vendor.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And when you say, the deal you and Tarek have, we're talking about Tarek El Moussa, for those who don't know, you guys have a solar company together now.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we did was, we actually really, what we do is solar is one of the things we do, but what we really kind of decided was we wanted to do energy efficiency. And the reason, and there's a big difference between that and solar for kind of 2 reasons. I'll explain it to you. So 10 years ago, nobody talked about their electric bill. It was just a cost. Nobody cared about it. Right. Well, for example, in San Diego, right? My parents live in San Diego, California. They have a place in Carlsbad, right? Their bill for their 3-bedroom townhouse 5 years ago was $150 a month. Their bill this summer was $800 a month on their electric bill. Okay. They're paying 80 cents for every unit of energy, whereas somebody in Michigan is paying 6 cents for every unit of energy. So energy costs are dramatically higher in different areas of the country, right? Well, with homes being built, there was no real energy efficiency standards with homes. So 85% of homes in America are over 25 years old, right? So we started looking, and it completely changed my mind when I saw the Inflation Reduction Act, which is absolutely hilarious. We call a bill the Inflation Reduction Act that spends $5 trillion, right? Stimulus, but whatever, that's the government for you. And so what it did was it realized and set aside money. Not only do you get federal tax credit for making energy efficient upgrades, But what you actually do, but starting in January of this year, there's $4.3 billion in cash that can be given to homeowners to pay for 50% of any energy efficient improvement they do in their home. And so I started researching this, and I saw this one ad, and it said, uneven temperatures in your house. I thought to myself, yeah, my master bedroom's freezing and my kid's room's really hot, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has that in a room in their house. And I started looking at it, and there's this new technology, and it's called a smart vent. And what it does, it's a vent you put in a room, and in that vent, it detects when somebody's in the room. So if nobody's in the room, the vent closes, so you're not heating or cooling a room nobody's in. Then you can actually set the actual temperature on that vent so that room hits a certain degree, and that room's vent will open or close to maintain that exact temperature, right? And it's all controlled. Where nowadays, people think they have a Nest, and I got my Nest, it controls my house. Okay, the way a Nest works is if you have your Nest in your hallway and you set your thermostat to 72 degrees, whatever room that Nest in hits 72 degrees, shuts off all the air or heat in that house. That's why you get hot and cold spots in your house. So people don't realize that. Well, guess what? To get all these smart vents in your house with an Ecobee, it's about $2,000. Cuts down somebody's energy bill by 15%. And guess what? The Inflation Reduction Act will give somebody 50% to pay for all that for them. So I started researching this, and being a mortgage guy, I'm like, dude, I am so used to fighting the federal government right now. Like they are just jacking rates up on me. And so I looked at this and I said, okay, energy efficiency is the fastest growing industry in the country outside of AI. Let me look at this. And so I looked at it and I started doing research, and I said, okay, people do solar right now, and it's really a shoddy way to do it. This kid's door-to-door sales guy.
Yeah.
He just sold Pest and Monavi and this and that, knocks on the door, doesn't know anything about it. Whatever. They run great businesses, not knocking them on that. But it's not exactly a really looked, highly upon industry, right? So I got the idea and I said, well, as a mortgage loan officer or as a real estate agent, why is it that when somebody buys a home, when they buy a home, we're telling them, hey, the roof's got a problem. The air conditioning's got a problem. The pool needs to be fixed. But yet their second biggest bill buying that home is now their electric bill outside of their mortgage. Why is nobody telling this person why they buy a home? Hey, this house you're buying in is in a high cost utility area. Like out here in Nevada, NV Energy, their rates have doubled, right?
Warren Buffett owns them.
Yeah, and more exactly, right? So now their energy bills are $500-600 a month. It used to be $200. Why isn't nobody telling them, hey, when you buy this house, your bill's going to be $600 a month. Here's a couple things that you should do to this house. Here's a bunch of free tax money to do it and get these things done that you can drive down your bill from $600 to $300, and you don't have to pay any of this money out of pocket, and provide that value to the homeowner, because a real estate agent will firm to their insurance agent, will firm to all these other things. But now energy costs are so high, nobody did it. So we got the idea of saying, hey, rather than being a solar company, what we can do is we work with the Department of Energy, and every metro area in the United States has different items that are recommended for that home to drop their energy bill. So for, let's say, $6,000, I could come into a house and I could cut their energy bill by 30% just by doing things like smart vents, different types of insulation in the roof, sealing around their windows and doors. I can get the federal government to pay for 50% of that in a cash rebate to the borrower. They can take that and they can pair it with solar. And now, instead of getting this big solar system that's really expensive, I can reduce the amount of energy they're consuming by 30% with these inexpensive upgrades. Now I put solar on their house, cost them 30% smaller system because I don't need as much. They get this massive tax credit, all of these cash rebates. And now with the programs out there, they can actually make their home more energy efficient, and it can be done and delivered as a service through loan officers or loan officers or real estate agents at that time of the sale of the home. And we kind of said, hey, that's a great ancillary service. Well, the problem we had was, how does somebody know what their home needs, right? We know with the home inspection, those are the repairs that they need, right? So my brother's an AI and machine learning developer. And so I called him up, and we're very different. I'm very numbers, math, marketing. He is like all computer programming. And I'm sure so socially very awkward, right? And so we've just not worked well together because we're kind of different. So I called him up and I told him I had a problem. I said, Corey, I have a problem. Here's what I need to be able to figure out. I need to be able to figure out a way that I can scan a home using satellite imagery, be able to know based on the location of the home, if it has solar panels on the roof or not. I need to know the construction of the home, like how good or the quality of the roof is. And I need to be able to then identify what utility company this is in, what their utility bill would be for that home. And based on this map, what energy efficient upgrades this home should do and all the eligible tax money that they could get for this home by scanning, because there's no database in the world that does this.
Yeah.
I need to figure this out. And I said, nobody's been able to figure it out yet. Nobody's done it. All these companies that nobody's been able to do it. And he's like, all right, give me a couple weeks. I'm like, okay, cool. So sure enough, comes back in about 6 weeks and says, okay, I got a working prototype. And I was like, okay, whatever. And so Zane Jan, who owns one of the largest solar companies in the country, owns a company called Better Earth, a good buddy of mine. I told him my brother was going to do this. And he's like, Brian, no, he can't do this. And I was like, you don't know my brother. This kid graduated at 14. He's next
really?
level. Like brilliant. Been coding computers since he's 6. He's just a different human being. So he comes back and sure enough, he did it. So basically what we have now that we just recently launched is I can take and we're expanding to a state. So let's say I can take a house in California. And you know how Zillow's Zestimate changed the way people find out what their home value is worth, right?
Yeah.
So Zillow did it beautifully. What'd they do? They went in and said, hey, rather than calling your real estate agent and getting a CMA for your house, come here and we'll give you your free information about what your house is worth. And then they started bringing an agent, selling leads to the whole thing, right? So I had the idea is what if I created something like Zillow's Zestimate, but for people's energy bill? Because people think like the pain point a customer has isn't, should I go solar or not go solar? It's, why the heck is my electric bill so high? That's what they don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't understand that point. Sure, can solar be the right solution? Yeah, for a third of the time, but most of the time it's just they're wasting a bunch of energy because they don't really know and their house is energy inefficient. So I created this, and what we can do is you can go in, type in an address, and in 30 seconds, it generates a report using machine learning and AI that we get imagery that's 4D image within 90 days of 80% of a metro United States, zooms in, scans the quality of the roof, gets all these APIs that come in from the utilities and puts together a 10-page report and says, hey, Ryan, on your house at 123 Main Street in San Diego, your estimated bill is about $742 a month. Here's the 5 energy efficient upgrades you should do to this home. That'll drop your bill to $523 a month. Here's how much money you can get from the federal government for doing this. And then if it makes sense going solar, once we do this, here's how much it would be to go solar. Here's how much you can save. Here's your federal tax credits, and does it in that full report and gets it done. And so we're launching that, and we basically are giving it as a tool for realtors and loan officers. And we're going to eventually put it online and using Tarek to be able to drive people to then they'll be able to go ahead and see, because now somebody can go and when they buy a house they want to buy, type in an address and see exactly what their electric bill is going to be, ways to save money, free tax money, everything else. And then we have a team of closers that helps them go in and design that for them.
That's incredible, dude. That's very different than when you were telling me about it initially.
Yeah.
Because when that was maybe like
About 6 months ago.
6 months ago, you were telling me about, the launch of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it was mainly just solar.
Mm-hmm.
And, you had a great way to go market it
Yeah.
and sell it and everything else and maintain quality control. So to hear the update and the progression that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So I brought my brother in, and it really changed everything, because
Yeah.
what really did it for me was when I saw NVIDIA, the tech company, go gangbusters, right? This stock went from $100 to almost $550. And I saw this and I was like, whoa.
Why did they go gangbusters?
So the reason why NVIDIA went gangbusters, NVIDIA is the only one that can mass produce an AI chip. So
Got
the
it.
chip that AI uses is of a NVIDIA product. So it's like, why did Tesla go gangbusters? They're the only one that could do an EV vehicle.
Yeah.
Then what happened to Tesla? Guess what? Ford, everybody else did it. Tesla stock came down. So I saw that, and I always thought, because I never was in the solar industry, and when I got into the solar industry, I hated it. I absolutely hated it, right? Because it was dirty and I didn't like it. But I knew the real value is there is that the green energy space is going to be is the second fastest growing industry in the world outside of AI. The opportunity is there.
Yeah.
The problem is there's a major level of distrust between a homeowner and solar companies.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, how do I fix that? Well, and I thought of, okay, I put my real estate hat on. How did homeowners all of a sudden start to trust Zillow about what their home value was? Well, because they got comparable sales. They did they got good data, and then they perfected the data. And then what they did is they gave the homeowner the ability to submit a request to Zillow. It said, hey, I did all these repairs to my house, changed the estimate value of my home.
Yeah.
So I said, that's it. What if I designed a report? Because people don't know, I didn't know this, and I'm not an energy expert. I've just been doing this 18 months. 60% of people's energy bill is paid for electricity they never use. It's crazy. So case in point, most people don't even know this. So your house, you're in Vegas, you get pounded by the sun on your roof, right? So we can track and we tell you right in your report how many hours of sunlight pounds on your roof. Why this is important is your attic gets 30 degrees hotter than the outside of the house. So you get 110 degrees in Vegas. Your attic gets to be 140 degrees, okay? 2% of homes in America have what's called a radiant heat barrier, okay? Basically, it looks like, remember back in the day when people get those banging sound systems and they put that silver soundproofing in their trunk so it didn't rattle? Pretty much looks like that, but you put it in your attic. And what it does is it prevents the heat of your attic from escaping into the inside of your home and the cooled air inside of your home from escaping into your attic, okay? To do it in a home is about $3,000 total. Not a big cost, right? Builders don't do it because it's not required, right? So by doing
Just
that,
hurts their bottom line.
exactly. It's 15% reduction in somebody's energy bill, just like that, for doing just something simple as that, right? So there's all these little things in a home. And I started realizing this, man, if I don't know this, and I learn a lot of things, nobody must know this. And so that's what really kind of put us down that rabbit hole. And basically I sunk about $2 million building this thing out. And it was pretty cool because last week, Fox News picked it up, Bloomberg picked it up,
Wow.
all these things started to pick it up. So now we're in that phase where we're just launching it, where that's kind of the direction we really wanted to take it, because it's what's right for the homeowner. The solar industry is going to hate me because it's like you as a real estate agent. Hey, do you want to sell a $3 million house or a $2 million house?
Right.
You get the point, right?
Yeah.
So now with energy efficiency, they're going to be selling smaller solar systems, therefore less commission, but it's way better for the homeowner. And I'm just always a believer, you do what's right and the money will follow.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I love that, dude. Where can people find that?
Yeah. So it's soarenergy.com, like SOAR energy.com. Yeah. So it's super cool. And right now we'll eventually have it in about 22 states. Right now we have it in California, Arizona, Texas, and Florida, and it runs throughout. And then we'll have about 7 other states by the end of the year on that. So
Awesome.
It'll be pretty wild.
No,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. I'm sure people, by the way, all these stories are fascinating. I think it's great. I'm sure people who, if you're still here, by the way, comment, let us know what story you like the most, because Brian's told a bunch. But at the beginning of this, I talked about Costa Rica and how, we got linked up with that. And for me, I stumbled upon it because of a timeshare in Mexico. So I'll tell this story real quick and how it led me down this path. But we were in Cabo probably a year ago. And I've been to Cabo a lot. I go a couple times a year. Love it out there because it's just a quick trip from Vegas. It's awesome. And I get stopped in the airport by one of these guys. And usually I just always walk through, keep my head down, because everyone's trying to always sell you something. And sure enough, I'm with my golf clubs. And he's like, hey, you like to golf? And I was like, well, yeah, obviously. And he goes, what if you could golf at Tiger Woods golf course? I was like, all right, you got my attention. And he's like, all right, come here. So he goes, brings me there. He's like, all right, you can golf at Tiger Woods golf course. Me and my friend Blake were going, and we brought our wives. It was just us 4.
Gotcha.
And he's like, it's just $150 each. And your wives can go hang out at the pool and stuff and blah, blah, blah. Sound like you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. So we do it. And he's like, it's got to be all cash. And I'm like, all right, whatever. This is kind of sketch, but it's all good. And so I go get cash and I pay him. So then, the days come, because it was a few days later, and I'm like, all right, is this guy going to pick us up or what? He's like, no, I'll just be down the street and, you just get your own taxi and then just pick me up. I'm like, all right, this is already weird. So we pick him up and he's like, all right, so they're going to, do like this little meeting and tour and show you the community and all this stuff. And, once of that, then you can go golf. I was like, okay. He's like, and then I also need another $50 for the caddies. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So whatever. We get there. And sure enough, I realized that it's a timeshare pitch.
Oh.
And I'm like, all right, whatever. So I'm like, all right, it's an hour. Like, we're already here. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So we go through it. The timeshare pitch ends up taking like literally 3 to 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And our wives are pissed.
Livid.
They're pissed. And let me tell you, at that point, I had already seen it. And I told him, I go, dude, I'm not interested in timeshare. Like, I am interested in buying real estate. So if you want to tell me what this stuff costs, I might be interested. And they just kept pitching me the timeshare. And I was like, dude, oh my gosh. So anyways, we're like 3 hours in. And at this point, I'm like fully committed. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I got to see what I can haggle them down to. Like just out of principle, I got to see the sales cycle through. Yeah. And so it started out as like $300,000 for a timeshare.
Oh my
on like a couple $1 million home. And then eventually I got it down to like $18,000. And so I got it down to like 18,000 and, don't ever negotiate against me, guys, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna
say. And then I ended up walking away because
just because you could.
Well, the guy was pissed and I was like, dude, I already told you I didn't want a timeshare. Yeah. So I just negotiated out of, pride and principle. Yeah. And just, I wanted to see how your sales process goes.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I was just like, I'm in it. I just got to know. And he's like, what would make you do it? I was like, if you just let me golf, I might consider it. Like I came to golf. Let me golf. And then if the golf experience is great, maybe I would want one. I don't know. And he's like, no, if you golf, then like the deal's off the table. I'm like, that's fine. And so then I leave, right? So then I go play golf and the course sucked. Oh, it was so bad.
That's why they don't let you play golf first. Yeah.
Exactly. It was so windy. It sucked. And his pitch was, well, you think Tiger Woods would make a crappy golf course? Like he designed it. I was like, Tiger Woods has done a lot of questionable things.
Yeah, exactly.
Tiger Woods is the last guy I trust, okay?
Exactly.
So, anyways, and I'm like, and this course is definitely one of them. Yeah. So, long story short, our wives ended up leaving while we went to golf. They were like, we're not staying here. And so they left. And, me and Blake are just playing and we're like, dude, this is just, by the time we get home, it's going to be like already the whole day's gone.
Yeah.
And they're going to be pissed. And so we get back and they were definitely pissed. So the next day, I was pissed now. Yeah. Because also what I found out during that was the guy who, sold us on everything, we already pissed at him.
Yeah.
To go golf and everything was free.
Oh my God.
Like everything was free to do. Like it's just, you had to sit through the pitch. So he just like, hustled us for all that money. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I was so mad. And so I was like, you know what? I'm so mad right now that just like this happened. I was like, screw it. I'm going to buy a vacation home.
Yeah.
Like that. But now that I've seen, like, I could definitely, like, I want a vacation home. Yeah. I was like, I'm tired of, but I'm not living in that scrub area. Yeah. So anyways, I ended up start looking and I'm like, all right, I started asking my buddies and, I knew of Discovery, but not like intimately. I knew of Summit Club out here in Vegas and, in Cabo, I knew about the two courses, El Dorado and what's the other one called? I forget. But anyways, I knew they were great, but they were like $20 million in Cabo.
Exactly.
I'm like, no, that's not what I need.
Yeah.
So, and you can't finance them.
Yeah.
You got to pay all cash. So I'm like, dang, dude, I wonder what else they got. So I get on Discovery's website and I start, just looking through all the different properties and I start texting some of my buddies who own in Discovery and they're like, check out these 3. You might like them. You want something tropical. Like, okay, here's what you would do. And so I see Costa Rica. I see Dominican. And then there was one other one, Hawaii.
Yeah.
So in not McKenna, but I forget what it is. But anyways, they're all 3 are new. And the only reason they're cheaper is because they're just starting. So, in any development, if they're just starting, you're going to get the best price because you got to wait for development to happen. So anyways, I'm like, babe, I'm gonna make it up to you.
Yeah.
I got a new idea.
Yeah.
We're gonna actually go to a place and buy one that's like sick. So we book a trip to the Dominican. We go to Playa Grande. Sickest golf course ever.
Really?
Period. Like it's not even, I would doubt anything is better. It was the best experience ever. You know, I'm looking at lots and stuff and I'm like, this is 1,000 times better than what I was just at. Plus, this ain't $20 million.
Yeah.
And this is better than the 20 million.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, like I'm convinced this is it. So I texted my buddy. I was like, dude, I'm sold.
Yeah.
I'm in. And he's like, dude, are you sure you're like, you haven't even seen any other properties?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. Let me like see what else is out there. So then he's like, go to Costa Rica. I was like, okay. So a couple months later, Minnie and I go to Costa Rica. And sure enough, we go like, look at this. Now this one's different because there is no course.
Yeah.
It's brand new. So like now I have to put my visionary hat on and say, what is this going to be? And sure enough, as I like experienced, I'm like, wow, this is going to be even better. Like the course definitely won't be as good because that Dominican course is unreal.
Really?
But the amenities, the community, it has 2 private beaches, the flight to Costa Rica is so much easier than Dominican.
And the wellness.
The wellness center, everything about it. I was like, this is it. And the fact was also too, the land, we were able to get 4 acres, which you couldn't get Dominican. They're just normal lots. And I'm like, oh,
what was pricing in Dominican? Was it similar?
You could get like an acre for like 4 to 5 million.
Gotcha.
That's where they were at. And my other problem with the Dominican was they were just going to take a long time to finish.
Yeah. That's the big problem with a lot of discovery.
Yeah.
Is it takes a long time to do it.
Yep. So they were going to take a long time before they were ever really finished. Whereas Costa Rica, it was their fastest selling community ever.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, dude, they ain't gonna have a problem. Like,
you have what, John Paul, right?
Yeah.
He came in with open checkbook to get that thing
yeah.
built.
So like, it's getting built regardless.
Yeah.
They don't need to sell lots to build it, but they are still selling. So, anyways, I negotiated a deal. I can't say the deal because apparently that's taboo.
Yeah.
But we got the lowest price per square foot.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
So
You did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
With that.
So I was like, all right. And they're like, hey, your neighbors, Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth over there. You know, this guy's over here. I'm like, all right, I'm sold. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do the deal, do the contract. Mindy loves it. And I'm like, okay, now what? And I start thinking about it. And I was like, I don't really want to put up all this money by myself for a property that I'm just going to use, you know, a couple of months out of the year. Now, you know, if I could find something, and they're like, you know, you can get a partner on it. Like, you both just have to buy like a membership, but you guys can co-own it. That's what Spieth and Thomas are doing, and some other people do. I was like, okay, who else is crazy like me that wants to go buy in Costa Rica, that loves to, you know, golf and do this type of stuff? You know, you got to have made a lot of money. And, you know, I called a couple of my investors and they're like, yeah, you know, I like it, but it's just like, I don't see myself vacationing and doing that. And so I literally just put it up on Instagram and I was like, hey, if anyone's interested in partnering on this kind of deal, let me know, because I'm open to talking about it and, you know, doing the deal together. And then that was when you reached out to me.
Yep. I know, which is crazy because I had just spent that weekend. So 2 of my buddies, my buddy Bernard, I was telling you about with the cannabis story.
Old Bernard.
Yeah, good old Bernard. I tell him he's literally the youngest Bernard in human history. It's like, you know, because it's such an old man's name or whatever. And so he has bought in a couple Discovery Club properties, and his partner Jay, who's the one that bought me out of the cannabis side, he owns in Troubadour, which is the place out in Nashville area, right? So they invite me to go out because the Troubadour, which is the Nashville one, is being hosted at the Madison Club for Stagecoach. So what they do as part of the Discovery Club is a lot of the clubs get together and they bring each other out for the different events for the members. And so, you know, Mike and Randy and, you know, George and all the guys that are involved in Discovery Club brought, you know, 20 or 30 different guests out that live at the Troubadour into the Madison Club for Stagecoach for the big weekend in April of this last year. And so my buddies Jay and Bernard called me up. They're like, hey, Madison Club wanted me to call you because you'd mentioned that you're interested in a Discovery Club property and they want to host you out here, what they call the Dodger House, out here. And I was like, so I tell my wife and I'm like, hey babe, I know we were going to be in Scottsdale. due down to fly back from Scottsdale into Palm Springs, because we were still living in California, to go stay, at the Madison Club for Stagecoach or whatever. And she was like, yeah, of course I'm down for that. Like, are you kidding me? And I was like, okay, cool. So we fly in and we land in. And this is when I realized Discovery's different, right? So we land in and we land at the Palm Springs airport and we just flew coach, no big deal, and got off. And they have a brand new Escalade dialed in Discovery Club, 2 different people that are drivers there, both super nice, walk up to us. And mind you, we weren't planning on going. We were in Scottsdale and we just went there. So we didn't have any clothes with us. We were just going to Scottsdale for the night. So we were going to fly right back home. And so we just had 1 day worth of clothes. And so I told my buddy Jay and Bernard, I'm like, dude, we don't have 3 days extra clothes. We would have to go home first. So you don't have time. So we show up and the 2 people at Discovery Club are like, oh, hey, by the way, thanks for sending us over your measurements and stuff. My wife's like, oh, because we need to go shopping. I don't have any clothes. She's like, oh no, it's already taken care of for you, miss. We show up at this house and the Madison Club houses. Yeah. I mean, they're $30-40 million houses. We pull up, we walk into this house, which is just unreal. And I don't care how much cool things I get to do. I'm still one of those guys that oh, this is really cool. How am I getting to do this right now? Kind of a vibe. And I go in and they have a full wardrobe for me, bro. Full wardrobe, 6 different outfits. And it's all Viore, all this and that. And I'm like, this is amazing. So long story short, we go there and they give us backstage passes. We get to go to all the parties. We're sitting in Luke Bryan's trailer with him. We're doing all this amazing stuff. And it's all just because we're a Discovery Club member with these things, right? It's not like we had to pay for any of this, right? So we get to go to the party. So Mike Melman has a party at his house after Stagecoach, with the house he just finished at Madison Club, which is just beyond.
That's the founder of Discovery.
Founder of Discovery, yeah, just unbelievable. And I ran into a bunch of people there within Discovery Club that I kind of had known. And I just realized wow, first off, I'm the poorest guy in this room, which is amazing because now I know I'm in the right room. Yeah. And number 2, everyone was super cool.
Yeah.
Super just so kind and just nobody cared who anybody was. They were just like, oh, you're here. You're just family and cool and everything else. And so I come back home and I fly and we land back in San Diego. We just lived from Palm Springs back down to our house in San Diego. And my wife looks at me and she's like, hey, babe. She's like, we got to get in there. We got to get in there. And my wife's very frugal with stuff. And I was like, oh, I know. Because I've just always been a big believer, to grow just, personally, you got to be around people that are at bigger levels than you. Right. And and I'm a question asker when I get in a room, right. With people. And so I called my buddy Jay up and I was like, hey, dude, which club should I get into? And I don't got $20 million budget, bro. What's the poor man's Discovery Club, right? Where's the cheapest I can get in?
That's what I was looking at too.
I was like, I'm selling. I was like, if we're talking a crypto bull run, I have a little different budget. But right now we're a crypto bear market. Rates are high. I was like, what can I get into where I can be, $2 to $3 million budget for me that I can get in and get something, right?
It's it doesn't exist.
He's like, bro, that doesn't exist. And I was like, okay. He's like, well, maybe I'll go in with you on one. He's like, but I already own a lot in Zapital. He goes, but bro, if you get in, he's like, just, by the time you're done building, you're 3x your money, 3x your money. Yeah. It's guaranteed, but like you were saying, it's cash. So I'm sitting at home and I think it's a Sunday and I'd gotten in that Sunday morning. And even though you and I had known each other, we had a conversation.
We've talked.
We've talked and done that kind of stuff. And I see this post and I was like, and it's I remember it said hey, looking for a partner on a Costa Rica deal, must have $1 million liquid or something like that. Right.
Yep.
And I wrote you and I was like, are you talking about Zapital in Costa Rica? And you wrote back, you're like, yeah. I was like, really? You're like, call me. And I was like, we hopped on the phone and thus this was all born.
Yeah. That's so funny.
And it was crazy. And I remember walking into my wife and I was telling you earlier, and I was like, hey babe, great news. She's like, what? I was like, I got you a Discovery Club property. She was like, oh my God, where? And I was like, Costa Rica. She's like, we've never been to Costa Rica. I go, I have. I was like, and it's fantastic. I promise you. And I was like, Bernard and Jay, who are like, she's known them forever. That's where they have their other lots. So she's like, oh, awesome. She's like, babe, but I know like rates are kind of high. You're starting this other company. She's like, because she just was staying at the Madison Club and saw these things at 20 or 30 million. She knows we ain't worth that, to know to buying that. She's like, what'd you do? And I was like, I got a partner on the deal. She was like, oh, cool. Jay decided he wanted to get another lot. I was like, no. I was like, I bought it with Ryan. She's like, Ryan who? I was like, you don't know him. And she was like, I was like, oh no. But I was like, hey babe, like, we know a lot of the same people. I was like, you had 2 kids at the time. I was like, we've known each other on social. He's a believer. I think we have a lot of stuff. I was like, worst comes to worst, we just use the property at different times. I was like, it won't be that bad. She was like, okay. That's how you're like a wife of an entrepreneur is they're just like, okay. They know when you have like your mind set on something and it's done. Let's just go along for the ride because majority of the time these things work out.
Yep. My wife was literally the same way. I was like, babe, I got the property under contract. I don't really know how we're going to go about doing the deal yet, but I'll figure it out. She's like, all right. Because we were in Costa Rica. So she was there. She's like, yeah, I'm sold. Because day 1, she wasn't sold. She was like, Dominican was better. Yeah. And then in day 2, she was like, yeah, I'm sold. Like, this is where it's going to be. Yeah. And she's like, how are you going to make it happen? And I was like, that's a good question. I was like, let me think through some different scenarios here. And then I told her, I was like, hey, I made it happen. We got a partner. Yeah. And she's like, oh, who? I was like, this guy, Brian. She's like, who is he? And I'm like, he's this guy. He's a believer, dude. He's good. Yeah. He's got kids, family guy. He's good.
Exactly.
Same. And she's like, okay. I was like, we'll all get together. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I know. And it's fun. But I feel like too, like I have like 7 mutual friends that you have. Yeah. So that's like, I'm like, okay, like when you have enough touch points with somebody, you kind of know, and it's,
and on social media too, you just know watching people, you're like, all right, I'd get along with that person and, whatever,
and I think a lot of it too is it's one of those things too, at the end of the day, like, I think there's some risk in anything you do, but when I saw what you got the lot for, I was like, oh, I don't really care.
Well, that's why, and I told you too, I was like, hey, I don't really know how this plays out. Maybe we flip the lot, maybe we build on it, maybe we build and sell, I was like, I don't know, but like, I just want you to know, like, I'm open to lots of different things. My intention though is to build and like use it. And you're like, yeah, I'm down with whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like when you're aligned with somebody and you guys are both entrepreneurs, you understand like markets change. And like, we know if let's say we go in and we buy the lot and we build on it and whatever, I'm just using random numbers, say it's $5 million to do all that. And somebody comes to us and is like, yo, hey, I want this. I'll give you $12 million for it. Me and you are both be like, see ya, let's take this, versus, so you just have to understand that. And it takes like you have to be doing what we do to be pliable in that, and I think that's where it's nice to know. I mean, I don't think it would have worked as well if you were worth 200 million and I was worth $12. We may have a little difference in what we can.
I'm like, so we're gonna build this. It's like 20,000 square feet.
Can I get a room?
That's funny, dude.
It's a small world.
But nah, man, I'm excited, and I'm glad that we finally got to hang out, and I'm excited for all the other things we'll end up doing together, and I think. It's just the first of many things. And that's kind of what we said too, of like, hey, I think this is going to lead to a bunch of other stuff because we have so many, synergistic things going on. Absolutely. So I'm excited for all of it. I'm excited just for what the future holds, dude. I appreciate you coming out, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me out, dude. Long overdue. And I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Yeah. So guys, go follow Brian, go check out his companies. And if you want to join us in Costa Rica for a round of golf when this thing is built, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.
We grew from 0 to 1,300 employees in 5.5 years. Most businesses suck at marketing, sales, and culture. You absolutely do not need to compete on price. You need to compete on the value and the experience that you bring to people. Create